Hi everyone, as you can see I've got company this week. Frankie's joined me. So welcome to day 39 of our blog series on John's Gospel, continuing the theme of spirituality. And our link reading today is from John's Gospel itself, chapter 9, verses 1 to 41, which focuses on the healing of the blind man. In my blog last week we saw how many rivers flowed from the temple in the book of Ezekiel and from the throne of God in Revelation. Heaven was basically meeting earth, and Jesus was becoming increasingly real to those who believed in him in faith. I wonder if you've ever had what they call a Sabbath moment, when Jesus not only seems real, but sounds and feels real, close in body, mind and spirit. Maybe for you that's been in prayer, whether in church or in private, or during sung or spoken worship, in Bible study, at home group, or maybe just in doing a kindly act for someone around and about the neighbourhood. All of these encounters are with the risen Jesus, with God, and they're a spiritual blessing. Indeed, I always define prayer as those moments with God in matters of the heart. All these things bring not just healing, but also new hope, new beginnings, new life, and lead away from sin and death, towards not just a way of seeing, but a way of being. Our encounters with Jesus need to inspire us to share his good news, his gospel, to love one another, and to live his risen life. But do we have the spiritual sight, indeed the spiritual insight, to fulfill this mission? In John chapter 9 we see Jesus healing the blind man, a man who'd been blind since birth, by smearing mud and saliva in his eyes and sending him to wash his eyes at the pool of Siloam, after which his sight was restored. The disciples' first question to Jesus after seeing this apparent miracle was to ask who had sinned to cause the blindness originally. Jesus told them no one had actually sinned. It happened so that God's healing work could be shown in life. Jesus proclaimed himself to be the light of the world, bringing God's grace and healing to all who would listen, and shining that light in the darkest of places, whether that be in sinful hearts or those who could not see, either physical and or spiritual. John's Gospel account of the healing of the blind man is a sign pointing to Jesus as a healer and the light of the world. It contrasts physical blindness that maybe can be healed with a spiritual blindness that either cannot or will not. The blind man actually never asked to be healed, but he listens to Jesus and is able to fully recount in chapter 9 verse 11 how Jesus restored his sight. Indeed, like many blind people, his other senses apparently were heightened to compensate for the loss of the one sense. He hears Jesus before he sees him, like all of us who believe yet have not seen. The restoration of sight is a gradual process from chapter 9 verse 11 as the man calls the Lord Jesus, to chapter 9 verse 38 where he actually addresses Jesus as Lord and worships him from then on. In chapter 9 verse 37, Jesus himself reveals the importance of sight and hearing in regard to faith. You have seen him, and the one speaking with you is that one. Jesus later in chapter 10 interprets the meaning of seeing, hearing and believing, where those who know him, his sheep, hear his voice and follow him. The blind man is more than one who Jesus heals. He is one of Jesus' followers, a sheep, and a member of his flock. A bit like the sheep, the blind man hears Jesus' voice, and like the shepherd, Jesus finds the blind man when he was cast out by the teachers of the law. Our senses, therefore, in one sense, are more than a way of just recognising Jesus. They're expressions of a relationship with him and in him, and thereby with God. The Pharisees, of all people, should have recognised the Messiah when they saw him, but their focus in terms of vision was blurred, not on truth and life, but based on rules, status and hierarchy. They were spiritually stubborn, not all, but many, rebuking the healed man harshly for lecturing them as they saw it on the law. They tried to discredit Jesus' miracles, but the healed man's simple approach in chapter 9 verse 25 embarrasses the religious leaders who exiled him in frustration. Jesus met the man and explained his identity, and reminds the Pharisees that those who ought to know better spiritually will be held more accountable. Those who come to God with humility and truth will be met with grace and forgiveness, and those who think they are wise, who claim to really have spiritual sight, will be judged accordingly. The blind man's healing was as a result of his own obedience, his faith in Jesus and the power of God, through which he received his physical and spiritual sight. For unlike many of the learned men, he had walked faithfully and humbly with his God and received the blessings tenfold. Have a good day, everyone. Thank you for listening. God bless. Bye for now.